Tonight for Rotary District 6560 in Central Indiana, we are speaking with our district leaders, our club leaders, and anyone interested in Rotary Youth Exchange. With us tonight, we have our district Rotary Youth Exchange chair, Jennifer Dale, and she is going to be sharing with us what we can do to impact our world around us, creating lasting peace, one student at a time. Jennifer, it's all up to you now.
Thank you for having me. I'm the district chair for Rotary Youth Exchange, and on my team is Joanne McKinney. She's our inbound coordinator. Amy Conrad is our outbound coordinator at the district level. Grace Dale is our rebound coordinator, and Mark McKinney is our youth protection officer. So that's what makes up our district team for Rotary Youth Exchange. So I've been the district chair since June of 2022, so just for not even quite a couple of years. But it was about, actually, I was looking at the calendar or trying to calculate it. It was about 17 years ago, almost to the day, the first time that my family had a Rotary Exchange student. We had a Rotary Exchange student from Mexico, Denise is her name. And at the time, I wasn't a Rotarian and there wasn't anyone in my family that was a Rotarian, but Joanne was a YEO, I believe, and she just kind of just asked if there was anybody who was interested in being a host family. And so really glad, of course, that we had said yes. So I had, at that time, I really didn't know anything about Rotary or what it was all about. My 4 children were school age. My youngest daughter at that time was only 5 years old. It was a great experience with Denise. She was a wonderful exchange student. And since then, we've hosted 3 other exchange students from Taiwan, from India, from Brazil. And then my daughter, that daughter that was 5 years old, in 2019, she became an exchange student and she went out to Peru, South America. Since then, she's gone to Ecuador, and I think this summer she's going to Africa. So it started a whole love for her of international travel and service projects around the world as well. So I hadn't been in Rotary when this started, but over time I did grow more and more interested in what Rotary was about. I joined in 2021, and then my daughter Gracie joined in 2022. And I'm going to say again, all because of Joanne McKinney kind of reaching out to somebody that she knew and saying, hey, would you like to be a host family? So it's a great way. Youth Exchange is great, of course, to get to know people across the world, but it's also a great way to get people to really understand what Rotary is. Right now, our district has 4 active clubs, 4 clubs that are hosting or who host students on an annual basis. So Carmel, Anderson, and then there are 2 clubs in Muncie, one of them being the Sunrise Club and the other the Muncie Noon Club, and they co-sponsor a student. So they work together and every year have an inbound student. I will say that this week we've had two clubs in our district reach out asking for more information about hosting, and so it's very exciting. And I'm hoping that we're going to go to LOL Pets this weekend, and we'll have a booth and want to spread the word about Rotary Exchange, because of course we'd love to grow the program back to where it was, and then even further if we can do that. Just to explain a little bit about how the Youth Exchange program is set up. Our district is part of a conference. It's called Central States. That group is a group of districts that's from Indiana and Illinois, Iowa, Michigan, North and South Dakota, Wisconsin, and even parts of Canada. That conference is one of the largest conferences, the most active in North America. And the summer conference that we have in Michigan, it's very exciting. It's well attended, and it has prominent speakers. We just found out tonight, I got an email tonight that the future Rotary International president for 25-26 is going to speak this summer at that conference. So that's very exciting. It really is a great conference. All the kids love it because there's hundreds of kids that are there. So The
Mm.
districts join together in a conference, and that's so that they can share resources. There's a lot of things about exchange, and it's better for us to be as a group. So, as a group with that larger conference, that's how it takes care of like our health insurance that we need, travel opportunities. There's a computer database that we have to have, manuals, forms, compliance officers. So this way, by joining together in the conference, the district doesn't have that weight on its shoulders all by itself. So the district can be assured that they're following the U.S. State Department laws, and that we're following Rotary International rules and guidelines for hosting the students. So at the district level, there's a chair, outbound coordinator, inbound coordinator, youth protection officer. Those are the ones that are responsible for the students. We're responsible for the well-being of the students and their safety. We need to ensure all of the documentation, the orientation, the training is completed for volunteers, host families, and for students. At the club level, there is a youth exchange officer and there's a youth exchange counselor. YEOs and YECs are responsible for finding host families, taking exchange students to club meetings. Usually we like to think at least one time per month that they go to a meeting, visiting with the student, uploading monthly reports about the student, how they're doing, and then communicating that information to the district level. Host families, which host families do not necessarily need to be Rotarians. Typically there are 3 host families per student each year. The host family takes care of the student on a day-to-day basis. They're the ones who are providing the housing and the meals, but they do not provide like the clothing. They don't provide like an allowance. They don't have to pay for school fees. They do provide transportation, getting them back and forth to school. So wanted to talk a little bit about club commitments for hosting. So when a club decides that they're going to sponsor a student, their commitments for hosting an inbound student, it's usually 1 student per year. That doesn't mean that a club couldn't host more than 1 student. They just obviously would need to, to have the support for that, the host families for that, then the financial resources for that. They need to have their own YEO. They need to have their own YEC. At the club level, that's where they are the ones who provide the host families. It's usually 3 host families per year, per school year. The club provides a monthly stipend to the student. That does vary by club. So the club can kind of decide what they'd like to give the student. It's usually between $100 and $200 per month. Very much, I think, depends on where they're located. I think our Muncie club gives $100 a month, if I'm not mistaken. The Carmel Club gives probably closer to $200 a month, but there's reasons for that. It's more expensive, I think. Cost of living factors in there and things like that. But that's up to the club, the amount. The club provides for the school enrollment fees, any books, extracurricular activities and fees, uniforms. That's within reason. Obviously, it's not fair game. The student doesn't get to decide everything that they're going to be on. But within reason, they provide those fees. Prom, they usually pay for like the dance entry fee, not necessarily the prom dress, but that's up to the club. Graduation gown and fees, things like that. RYLA fees, if it's applicable for that student to go to RYLA, at the club level, they typically pay for that. And then the club is responsible for transportation to district events. So as a district, we usually have we have our student orientation, we have a fall trip, a December Chicago trip, a spring trip, and then the summer conference. And at the district level, we will take them on those trips, but we just ask that the clubs get those students to us. So they're just driving to meet us somewhere within our district. And then there is a Central States application hosting fee that's $275 a year. And the club pays that fee for that inbound student. So some other notes, students usually arrive in August. They sometimes get here like maybe as early as the last week of July, but typically sometime between the last week of July and no later really than mid-August. We like to get them here before school starts. And now that school starts so early, they have to get here that early. They do stay here through the summer conference. And so that is usually the week of like July 11th. So a lot of the students are leaving right after July 15th. Most of them then would be required to go home by the end of July because of their visas. So that it's really for them, it's really a full year experience. Um, Clubs cannot select if they want to have a female or male student. They can't select what country the student comes from. We can't either from the central states. There are times when certain schools have English proficiency scores that you have to meet. So, like Carmel is an example of that. They require that the students be at a level 4 or 5. So we do test our students, and the one that has the highest English proficiency usually goes to Carmel for that reason. Want to say students are not allowed to drive a car, which is probably a good thing. And they're not allowed to drive any other kind of motorized vehicle while they're here. They are not allowed to date exclusively. That also helps host families, I'm sure. They do have to follow, obviously, US laws, and they are not considered adults, even if they do turn 18 during the school year. Duda, who's in the Muncie clubs right now, she's already 18, but we don't consider her an adult, and she obviously is treated like she is a child in the family and things like that. So let's talk about club interaction and building relationships and the fun of having exchange students in the club. I think having youth exchange students in the club enlivens the club members. The more that the student attends those club meetings, the better. They really build the relationships. I know, like in Muncie, our clubs are small enough that they really do get to know a lot of the people. And Daniel Stallings, he's our YEO. He does a really good job of getting Duda to both of those club meetings, for us, both of our 7 a.m. meeting and then our noon meeting. We always really encourage the student to talk in front of the club as often as they can. And for them to just ask and let people know what activities they are interested in trying or doing, or if they have bucket list items. So a lot of our students will say that they want to go to the Indy 500. They've heard of that, the Indianapolis 500. So they'll say that they would like to go if anybody has any extra tickets. A lot of them want to go see like an American football game, baseball game, basketball games, things like that. And a lot of times people don't know that the student might be interested in that until they actually say it. So in the past, we've had a lot of success with them getting to do fun things when they are able to go often to those meetings and talk about some of the activities they want to do. As well, depending on the student, sometimes they are interested in seeing musicals or plays or certain types of museums, and somebody might be interested in that and take them. This year, we have a student who's going on a cruise to the Bahamas, which is kind of a different one. So our exchange students are allowed to leave the country. There's a little bit of paperwork involved, but it's not that much. And as long as we let the Department of State know in a formal way, they are able to leave and do fun things like that cruise. This year, Duda was able to go to Miami with Frank, and I think she had an amazing time going down there. So, and I know now Frank's going to be hosting Duda. That he and his wife are going to be her third host family. So that was really fun though for her to get to go to Miami. She really wanted to do that. In the past years, we've had some of our students travel. Like I remember one year, Monzi was from India. And one of our Rotarians, she was older and she was single and she was going on a trip, and her and Monzi kind of connected, and she asked her to go with her to Florida and then to Texas, and they had a great time. I know they still communicate with each other. They've built, a great friendship across the continents. And I want to reiterate that the more that the students do within the clubs, it's just really great for both the student and then obviously for the club members, because it's a good way for them to build a relationship, to learn about another culture, and to get energized about Rotary and things like that. As clubs, especially if you're hosting, want to encourage your members who are part of it to actually consider hosting a student. The commitment, because it's 3 host families per year, is about 3.5 months to 4 months. So it's a shorter period of time. It's not a full year like some programs, which is helpful. Also want to encourage members to ask others outside of Rotary to host. Like I mentioned, I was not a Rotarian before, and if it wasn't for Joanne asking, I don't know that I ever would have become a Rotarian. So it's a great way to get others outside of Rotary involved, and a good way for them to like start to slowly learn about Rotary and what it's about, and build that interest, obviously, in our clubs. And then including students in service projects. Many of them, when they are going through orientation in their host or in their country, they are told about doing service projects, and they're actually very excited about that. So as often as clubs want to include the exchange student in those in service projects or just their regular events, I think the students they really like being a part of something like that. And then just briefly want to talk about sponsoring an outbound student. So that is the student who local here that is going to go overseas. An outbound student does not have to be a Rotarian. And really for the club, there's not a financial commitment to sponsoring. We usually do have, if the clubs are sponsoring an outbound, usually the student will come and talk before they leave, and they will come and speak afterwards to tell the club about the experience. Obviously, a club could decide to have a scholarship for that student, but like right now, we don't have any of our clubs who are sponsoring outbounds. They did not provide scholarships for the students, so it's not a requirement by any means. But it is a great way for club members to know about the exchange program and offer it to students, usually if they're between the ages of like 14 and 17, to offer it to them or to their families and see if they have any kind of an interest. Again, they don't have to be Rotarians, so it's a good way to kind of talk about Rotary without maybe just saying, "Hey, come join." It gives them a little bit of a of a step to come in. And we do have a mom whose daughter is out right now, and she's talking about joining Rotary. Before, she knew nothing about Rotary, and then now her daughter is out in Brazil for the year, and she's pretty excited about Rotary and wants to join. So I think that's an exciting part of youth exchange. And then anybody who is interested, or if you have any more questions about youth exchange or want to pass on that information, they can always give them my email address or go to our district website. If you go to our 6560 website and just click on about District 6560 and then scroll down to Rotary Youth Exchange, if you click on that, there's information about our youth exchange program, and there's also an interest form, and it's up to date. And if you click on it, then that goes to our outbound coordinator. She gets that information. So, and then I will also be at Pets this weekend, LOL Pets this weekend, with a booth. I can answer any questions that people have. And I'm also willing to come to any club and talk about youth exchange, if at the club level, or if there's a group of people who are interested in it, I can have a Zoom meeting and talk to people about it that way. So I obviously love youth exchange, and I think that Rotary Youth Exchange definitely builds peace one person at a time. So, does anybody have any questions?
I do have a question about a club that's going to sponsor an outbound. Are they also obligating themselves to receive an inbound, or is it just a district one?
No, they're not obligating themselves to receive. They can sponsor without obligating themselves to. Now, I will say, everybody who is hosting, they're their first groups that we go to sponsor an outbound. But if we have like right now, we have like basically 3 clubs who are sponsoring. If we had 4 outbounds, then we would go to a different club and ask them to sponsor. So in the past, and what we have done in the past couple of years, just because things are different, we've gone to clubs who have had previously have had exchange students, but they're not doing it right now, like Zionsville. So there is somebody at Zionsville already who has gone through the volunteer process and the background checks and things like that. That's usually what I ask, just because the person who they're not necessarily the YEO of that club because they don't have an inbound, but they're kind of operating as a youth volunteer. And so just in case they're picking up that student or taking them, to speak, we do go through that process. But it's not a full-fledged having to have a whole committee at the club level just to sponsor an outbound. Yeah.
Okay.
Jennifer, for a club that is looking to sponsor, and our club is already a part of that, but I'm just thinking, if we weren't, what would be the initial financial commitment to accept an inbound? So you talked about the monthly stipend, and transportation costs to events and so forth.
Yeah. So let's see, $1,200, $1,500. I think that I think that it would be a minimum amount really would be about $3,000. They would want to have that to make sure. I'd have to see, every club kind of does things a little bit different. And that's why I'm hesitant, because I think if I asked Muncie clubs how much they set aside, it is going to be a different amount than what Carmel sets aside. Because I do think that certain clubs give out more, like I said, more money for a stipend. And they do sometimes offer them to pay for more things. So the student themselves and their families, what they're expecting, we like before they come over, we tell them what that stipend is going to be for that particular club. And probably for Indiana, the minimum would be about $100 a month as far as the stipend goes. But that's what they're expecting. They're not really expecting a whole lot more than that as far as the activities and things like that. But I think a club should, I would think a club would want to at least set aside $3,000, but probably between $3,000 and $5,000.
And on the flip side of that, a family that is sending their students. So
Mhm.
on
On the flip side of that, if you're
yeah.
sending your
So
student out,
what would a family
yeah.
expect to send their student? What would the
I
cost?
think that it does vary, and it varies. It varies about where you're going as well. But I would say at least $5,000 to $8,000,
Wow.
because the outbound program, the way that we have it set up, that outbound student and family, they are paying for the expenses themselves. We don't have, obviously, at a district level right now or at a club level, we don't have a lot of scholarships for outbounds. There is one scholarship that Central States offers, but they're really only giving out maybe a few $100s of that. But the outbound student, they're paying for their Central States fee themselves. They're paying to go to the summer conference, and their families are paying for that. They're paying for their plane ticket to go over, and they're paying for insurance as well. They must get insurance through Central States, and that alone is about $1,100 for the year. I'm sure for those of us that pay our own insurance, that's not a lot, but it is if you're paying an extra $1,100 for your child to have health insurance. And then the plane tickets, we have to go through a travel agency. So it's not like you can go on to Expedia or something like that and try to get a cheaper flight. It has to be done through the travel agency. So they are at more of a premium price. So you can expect that the plane tickets are going to be at least $1,500 to $3,500, depending on exactly where they're going. Yep.
I just, one observation is, as we have been preparing to be a host family, we had looked several years ago of hosting another student through another agency.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
the comparison between the Rotary and our previous experience, there is no comparison.
Yeah.
Rotary, I would feel extremely comfortable sending my child anywhere as an outbound to through Rotary. The
Yes.
background checks, the orientations, the trainings are very thorough, very intensive, and
Mm-hmm.
comprehensive. So
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
Rotary takes us very seriously. And it's a great program that and parents of outbound students could be assured that their child is in with a good organization.
Yeah, the same structure that we have here in the United States is the same structure that they do have in other countries. That is the nice part about it being under Rotary International, because they do have the Rotary International has all of these guidelines and rules that all other countries who are a part of it have to follow as well. So, and all of the youth protections, that we have here in the United States, it really is the same overseas, which is nice to know, and that isn't the case necessarily with other programs. I will say, even though I know $5,000 to $8,000 sounds like a lot of money to send your kid for outbound, but if you're going through a lot of these other programs, you are talking about more like $20,000 to $30,000. I'm sure some of them that are more, because on those other programs, like, they are paying the host families to host the kids and things like that. Whereas obviously at Rotary, it's all volunteer. So that does cut down and the cost, and then everything that we are doing as far as documentation and the reports and things. Obviously, it's all volunteer, whereas in other groups, they're getting paid to do those kinds of things. When someone like a YEO goes and does a house visit in another organization, they actually get money to do that, which seems seems crazy to think about because we're used to it being different, but that is more the standard. So it is a great program, and I felt extremely safe sending Gracie overseas. Even, really, like, I honestly didn't even know where Peru was when I first found out that she was going to Peru. It's clearly a very different country, the United States, but I didn't hesitate because I knew that they were following the same rules as what we were. So, and that was the case, that they operated in the same way that we did. Okay. Well, thanks for letting me talk.
Yeah,
And
I'm
then
so glad you were available to talk to us. And
Thank you.
Just wanted to say you did a great job.
Yeah.
thanks.
Tracy,
Well rehearsed.
you've been involved with Youth Exchange, haven't you?
I have been, and she did a really great job. I've been involved with Rotary Youth Exchange, but here at our district, and then also hosted through other organizations as well. So hosted for about 10 years and served on this committee for a stint of time as well, a few years maybe. And it's a great program, and she was very thorough in what she covered. So great job.
Yeah. I've got to get her scheduled to speak at the Sunrise Club.
So the scholarship that she mentioned that Central States offered is called the Shoemaker Scholarship. So when I was there for the winter board meeting, I asked the Central States treasurer, what shoemaker is that named after? Is it Robert Shoemaker from Anderson? And it is indeed named after our own PDG, Bob Shoemaker. So I need to do some more research and find out why they have a scholarship from one of our Rotarians, but it is there, and there's quite a lot of history associated with that, and there are funds available for people who want to access the Shoemaker Scholarship. And I believe they extended the deadline this year till Friday, if anybody wanted to apply for that scholarship.
And
So
I think too, it sounded to me like they might be, hopefully at our summer conference, when we're at that meeting, that they might be releasing more of those funds each round. It seemed like that's the direction, hopefully, that they were going, because there is quite a bit of money that's grown from that fund. And right now they're only releasing it, and I'm going to forget the percentage, but I do think that they're thinking about releasing more of it, which would be helpful, I think, for students. Yeah. So
wonderful. Well, thank you for being with us tonight. Are there any other questions or anything else that those of you that are on the call need to talk about on a district or club level?
I just wanted to volunteer the information that when Lafayette would have an inbound student, that generally we would partner. Our noon club and our daybreak club would partner. One would be in charge of finding housing, and the other would finance the stipends. So we've been doing that as a partnership. Well, all of this happened before COVID, of course.
Yes.
But that seemed to work out nicely, and those students would speak at both clubs, and we had a bigger pool of people and Rotarians to help out for transportation and other tiny things as well. So that's another option that does, at least it existed in our network here.
Yeah, and that is how the Muncie clubs work. They partner
Okay.
together. I think it's really helpful. It also, I think, too. I mean, Muncie is a smaller town, but I think it connects our two clubs as well. Frank, you probably see that on a day-to-day basis. But it's a nice way for those two clubs to connect and to sponsor. And you're right; it increases that pool of volunteers.
Right.
I will say that Muncie. They have a really good, they have an actual like committee as well that's at the club level. A lot of people who serve on that and help with like transporting Duda and planning things and getting the word out, so that we can talk to schools and things like that about outbounds. They do. Daniel does a really good job. Jen Johnson is his YEC. They do a really good job of keeping a pretty good solid group of people together to run youth exchange at that level, which again is a good way to bring in new people to that committee, because a lot of people who maybe just first join Rotary, it's probably a good committee to get on. Or like Sunrise Club has a lot of youth, has a lot of younger people, or some younger people in that club, and it's a nice way for them to probably to hear about students and get connected with those students.
Well, I'm excited for the future for our district and that we're going to grow this program, and we're already seeing some growth start.
Yeah.
And very excited for the summer meeting to meet the incoming Rotary International president. You will get an opportunity, and those of you that are on the call, if you're not coming to PETS, you could still register for Sunday only and meet Stephanie Urchik, who is the incoming Rotary International president. She will be the lunch speaker on Sunday, and you can register just for that to hear her. And we've been very fortunate at our Land of Lincoln PETS that we always, well, I've been going there for 9 years. Every year that I've been there, we have had a Rotary International president-elect speak at presidents-elect training. So I think it's because we're awfully close to Chicago, but it's a great opportunity, and anyone can come to the Sunday lunch and hear the president-elect speak.
And what time is that the lunch begin? And
Oh, it's probably beginning at noon, and it's Central Time. So now that we've sprung forward, I don't know. It'll be Sunday.
okay.
It's on the Land of Lincoln Pets website.
Is there a registration deadline?
Don't know about that, but you know who would know would be Dale Basham, because he's on that committee.
All right.
You can give him a little ringy dingy to see if you can.
I'll give him a ringy dingy.
Okay, well, some of you I will see in Effingham, Illinois, and some of you I will see at our next Rotary event. Every month we meet to talk about what's going on in the district. And I really appreciate you, Jennifer, for being here and for saying yes to Joanne and and joining Rotary. It has been a sheer pleasure. I have enjoyed every time that we have hung out together, and I'm looking forward to seeing you this weekend.
Sounds good. Thank you, everyone. Thanks.
Yeah.
Night, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night. Bye.